Welcome to the Business Interview. I'm Markus Karlsson. Today we're trying to get to the bottom of human behavior, or rather we're exploring how a better understanding of how humans actually work can make money. My guest today argues that neuroscience has a role to play in both business as well as public policy. Olivier Ollier is Professor of Behavioral and Brain Sciences at Aix-Marseille University in the south of France. He also works as an advisor for both companies as well as public bodies and entities. Welcome to the program, Olivier.
Thank you very much for having me.
Now, first, I want to ask you, what does a professor of brain sciences actually do?
Well, on the paper, in theory, my job is to run experiments in labs and to teach, to give lectures at university. Well, I really enjoy that. I really love it. But after 10 years of being stuck in lab, working for myself to learn more, to understand more, I started to ask myself, how can you help people? You pretend that you understand bits of human behavior, brain and behavior. Can it be put to good use? And this is when I started to try to apply some of the work we're doing on decision making, on understanding how people process information, to causes like fighting obesity, fighting tobacco, helping policymakers, develop more efficient, more grounded strategies.
And how can you help business, for instance? Could you give us some practical examples of how understanding human behavior can actually improve the way that companies do business?
What is interesting in companies is that when it comes to technology, they are very prone to testing things, whether we're talking layouts of websites or anything they develop. But when it comes to human behavior, to strategy, very seldom do they rely on evidence-informed strategies. How are a lot of very important decisions made in the public and the private sectors? You've got people in charge, boards, that gather information, that are fed with information, and then they decide of a strategy or a policy, and they apply it. Mm-hmm. And they see what happens. What we're advocating with more and more people these days is to test before you implement. Is the fact that if you want to develop a new strategy, you need to be able to see how people react on smaller scales in order to potentially adjust your strategy and be more efficient. It's cost efficient, and you can avoid a lot of mistakes, which both for the private and the public sector is crucial these days.
Okay, I'm actually going to become a little bit of a guinea pig now, because you've brought some implements or toys that you use in your daily work. I suppose I shouldn't call them toys, because I'm guessing they're very expensive. I'm going to try these glasses on, and I'd like you to explain to me what they actually do and what you track by using these glasses.
These are eye tracking glasses. What they do is they are recording your gaze. Where are you looking at? What are we using them for? As I mentioned earlier, a lot of decisions we're making today in the public and the private sector are based on surveys, polls. We ask people, do you like this? Do you like that? Are you aware of this? Are you concerned about the planet? Or where do you look when you cross a road? Mm-hmm. And people answer, but we don't know exactly what they're doing. Thanks to these glasses and the fact that we can go virtually everywhere. We're working in transportation, nuclear plants, we work on sustainable consumption in supermarkets, for example, education. We know where people are looking at. We know what they are reading. We know if on a cigarette packet and there is a message that tells you not to smoke or smoking kills, we know whether people are paying attention to it or avoiding it. Mm-hmm. And this is vital information that you cannot have without this kind of technology. And if you add on top of this eye tracking technology, brain scanning, the fact that
this implement right here. I'm not going to try it on because I don't want to mess up my hair. That would be detrimental for a television presenter.
But this allows to distinguish to a certain extent whether people are paying attention or just looking at something, which is again crucial when you're trying to adjust, to refine a strategy to fight obesity or fight tobacco, for example.
So these glasses, they were following my eye movements just
exactly.
Now. They were tracking what I was looking at. And whether or not I was paying attention to you, I suppose.
Then I might know at the end.
We're going to look at that video a little bit later on, I suppose, and watch it very, very carefully. Now, your basic assumption in your work is that humans are neither completely rational nor completely emotional. It's all about understanding that sort of link between the emotional and the rational.
Exactly, this interdependence. I think when you look at the way we function, and on a daily basis, we like boxes. Friends, enemy, good, bad, emotion, rationality. It's very easy to categorize things. But these boxes that our brains are making to facilitate our lives do not mean that our brains are functioning in such a dichotomic way.
Do you think that economists, business people, they tend to divide people into those kind of boxes?
Yes, definitely. The mere notion of rationality is rooted in economic thinking. For decades, lots of public and private strategies and policies have been based on this assumption that we are rational beings, that we always weigh gains and costs, that we use information, that we choose what we prefer. But go outside, look at real people in their real lives. This is not the way we function. Mm-hmm. So now we can measure that, and we can feed strategies with these measurements of real people.
Now, you say that a better understanding of human behavior could lead to less waste when it comes to public policy. Could you talk us through a specific example of how that can actually work?
Yes. Think about one big concern today is to save energy. And the strategy that a lot of institutions are using in order to convince people to switch their lights off, to use less of our air conditioning, etc., is to explain them how bad doing this would be for the planet, the amount of CO2 that is released in the air, etc., etc. However, if instead of lecturing people, you're providing them with information on what their neighbors or their close relatives are doing, you're more likely to influence them. Mm-hmm. I don't know if you've ever been to a hotel where you saw these little stickers in the bathroom telling you to reuse your towels in order to save water and to save electricity, explaining you how good it is for the environment if you do so. Well, if instead of being given a lecture on the sticker, you're told that a certain amount and a big amount of people who were in this room before you reuse their towels, it works better. You can do it with Chinese farmers who never talk to each other. Lecturing them on how bad pesticides are can work a little bit. But if you tell them that most of the farmers around have dropped the use of pesticides, then there is a behavior change.
But it all sounds like good common sense. Do we need people like you? Do we need scientists to tell us these things and to inform us about our own human behavior?
One of the hardest things to deal with in strategy, public and private, is to deal with the obvious. When people consider something the obvious, they don't think about it. They don't rethink about it. They don't measure it. And sometimes this is the hardest things. Yes, it's common sense, but unless you've got some figures showing you that this common sense is harming your benefits, is harming the health of people, then you forget about it. And part of my work and some of the trademark work we're doing on this notion of emo-rationality, that is at the interface of emotion and rationality, is to revisit the obvious. Mm-hmm. Definitely take some things that we think are here or have been here forever, we take for granted, and to look at them with these measures. And maybe the big principles underlying them, we know them, but the tweaks that need to be made or developed in the environment in order to solve these issues, whether we're talking about people's health, saving energy, but even business, strategy in business, the biases, all these biases, we need measurements, we need evidence-informed strategies.
Now, you've been selected to be part of an initiative from the World Economic Forum called the Young Global Leaders, which I suppose would suggest that business and politics, that they're paying attention. But what's your sense on that? Are businessmen and women and are politicians paying attention to what you're actually saying?
What is very interesting is when I started back in 2008 with the World Economic Forum and I was introduced as a neuroscientist, we weren't so many biologists around or people working on human life. And most of what businessmen were talking about when they were interacting with me was a relative having Alzheimer's or brain disorders. And then I sensed the shift when they realized, thanks to some work in behavioral economics, in psychology that became mainstream, including a very influential book called Nudge, on how you adapt the environment to change the behavior of people, that we could bring some things that are very important. Understanding how our decisions are biased is crucial for a company, especially when you're dealing with stress, when you're managing risk. Large-scale risk management is more and more relying on psychological insights. And this is where this interest, this common interest, and this interaction between cutting-edge academic work, cutting-edge technology, and some of the most influential institutions in the world, like the World Economic Forum and what occurs every year at Davos, makes a lot of sense.
All right, we're going to have to wrap it up there. Olivier, thank you very much indeed for taking the time to speak to us. And with that, we're also going to wrap up this edition of the Business Interview. Thanks to you for watching.